Good morning, guys. In the last session, we discussed about what is generator and what type of generators are available in the data JPA. Generators are used to generate the value for primary key column. Instead of we are setting the value for the primary key column, we can take the help of generators to set the value for primary key column. So in the data JPA, there are several generators available like a table, identity, sequence, UUID, and auto. So these are several generators that are available in our data JPA. Table means it will create a separated table to maintain primary keys. Identity means it will use auto increment in the MySQL. Sequence means it is used for Oracle database. It will create a separate sequence to generate the value for primary key. Next one, UUID. It supports alphanumeric values for the primary key. Column data type should be varchar in the database. A random text alphanumeric value will be available to generate the value for primary key. Then next one, auto. It picks the generator based on underlying database. Good. If we are having a special requirement, to generate the primary key value, then we need to create our own generator. The process of creating our own generator is called as custom generator. So you can work with custom generators for Oracle database as well as for MySQL database. Good. Fine. Today we are going to understand what is composite primary key. What is composite primary key? Right. If a table having more than one primary key, then that is called as a composite primary key. More than one primary key column in database. If a table contain more than one primary key column, then that is called as composite primary key. For example, if I am creating a table, I will write a query like this. Create a table book. Inside this book, we are going to take book ID, which is an integer, and we are going to specify int as a data type for the book. Then book name will be available. Okay, that we are going to specify as varchar. Then similarly, book price will be available. So that we can specify as a float value. Now, here there are three columns available in the table. Let me take author name also. Author name. So this author name is also I'm taking as a varchar. So after this, we are going to specify primary key as book ID. So this is how normal table will be created. So this table contains several columns: book ID, book name, book price, author name, and primary key we are giving as a book ID. This is regular table with a single primary key. Table with one primary key column. Why we need to maintain primary key column in the table? Why we need to maintain primary key column in the table? Come on. Why we need to maintain primary key column in the table? To maintain unique data and not null data. My table should maintain the unique data and the table should not have the null value for the column. Primary key is a constraint which contains unique plus non-null values. Good. Now, same table, whatever that I'm taking, right, book ID. Currently in this table, book ID should be unique, book ID should not be null. Then I want to take a table with a composite primary key. Table with a composite primary key. Table with composite primary key columns. Composite primary key columns nothing but the table should have more than one primary key column. If the table is having more than one primary key column, that is called composite primary key. So here I'm going to specify book ID and I'm going to specify book name as a primary key. Okay, earlier we are taking only one column. Now we are taking more than one column. So if you take more than one column, then this is called composite primary key. So how we are going to implement this composite primary key in our data JPA? When the table is having one primary key, we are able to create entity class directly, and we are able to perform operation with the entity class. But here two primary keys. When we have two primary keys, how we are going to deal with that? How do you create the entity class for that? How do you create entity class for that? Let's observe. And remember one more point. For composite primary keys, we cannot use generators. So we know generators concept. What is the purpose of generators? What is the purpose of generators? Which is used to generate the value for primary key column. But when the table is having composite primary key, we cannot use generator for that column. So you need to set the values for composite primary key columns manually. Now, let me take one project now. New starter project. Composite primary key application, data JPA, and MySQL driver. Dependencies I'm taking, next and finish. Let me copy the database properties. Yes, I'm taking database properties. Good. Now, so let me go to this 10th project that we are creating. Let me create entity class. Okay, so book ID and book name I want to take as a primary key. So book will be available, book primary keys will be available. So first let me create one class with a name called book PK. So this is entity, now book PK. So a separate class we are creating. This is not entity, but this class will represent what all the primary keys required for the table. So I'm taking a separate class called book PK. Inside this class, you can take the variables: private, integer, book ID, private, string, book name. So these are the two variables mapped to two columns in the database. I want to make these two columns as primary keys, ID and name. So let me write setter and getter, and let me write toString. ToString method is available. Fine. Now this class is representing all the primary keys required for the table. So when this class is representing all the primary keys, we are going to use one annotation called @embeddable annotation. What is the annotation? @embeddable. @embeddable annotation represents the Java class which contains primary key column names. What is the meaning of earlier we have used @entity. What is the meaning of @entity? What is the meaning of @entity? @entity means the Java class which is mapped to database table. If your class is mapped to a table, we will use @entity. But here we have embeddable. What is the meaning of embeddable? What is the meaning of embeddable? The class which represents only primary key columns in the table. Okay, good. Next, let us create our actual entity class. So I'm taking actual entity class as a book table, or let me take this one book table. Okay, so I want to make it as a entity, @entity annotation. Let me take it as @table. Name is equal to books info table. I'm changing the table name. If I don't write @table annotation, what will happen? It will take the class name as a table name. In the database already a table available with a name called book. Use the database, show the tables. Okay, so there is already a table available with a name called book. That's why I'm giving a different name for the table. Now let me write private integer book ID, private string book price, double price, private double price. As we discussed, don't use primitive data types in the entity. You know the reason also. If you don't set the value also, it will take the default value. So private double book price. Now private string author name. What about the book ID and book name? Do I need to write them again, or it is already available in the another class? They are already available in the another class. We no need to write them once again. Private double book price, private string author name is available. Now, so specify the class which contains our primary keys book pk. Okay, so this is the class which contains all the primary key columns. Now to refer all the primary key columns available in the other table, we are going to use embedded id. Embedded id represents that the class which is having the primary key values. Whenever this entity is referring with the database, it should consider this class variables as the primary keys. Which class contains all the primary key columns? That is embeddable. So to refer that embeddable class in the entity, we are using embedded id annotation. So these two annotations are important when you want to work with composite primary key. If you have single primary key column, @id annotation is sufficient. So if you have single primary key column, @id sufficient. But when you have more than one primary key column, then you need to go for embedded id. Where to use embeddable? Where to use embedded id? Where to use embeddable? Where to use embedded id? Embeddable will represent the class which is having all the primary key columns. What is embedded id? To refer to the embeddable class in the entity, we are using embedded id. Now let us write setters and getters. Can I use the generators now? Can I go for the generators, or I cannot go for the generators? No, generators are not supported. Generators are not supported when you go for composite primary key. So generators are not supported for composite primary key. Let me take the constructor also, zero param constructor and parameterized constructor. To initialize the variables, I'm taking zero param constructor and I'm taking parameterized constructor. Here also zero param constructor and parameterized constructor to initialize the values for the variables. Very good. So look at this. I have taken separate class called book pk and I have taken book class. Inside the book class, I'm referring to book pk by using embedded id. Good. Now let us go to our repository. New interface repository. How many repositories we need to create, guys? Do I need to create 2 repositories or 1 repository? How many entities are available? How many tables will be available? 1 table. So how many repositories are required? Only 1 repository is required. So let's go to book repository. I want to make it as a JPA repository. How to do that? Come on. Extends JPA repository. I want to extend the properties from JPA repository. What is our entity? Book is our entity. What is the ID? Data type of the primary key. Data type is a integer or data type is a class. Here is the difference. When you have single primary key, we will specify integer as a data type. But my primary key is not 1 variable. My primary key is 2 variables. So we will specify the data type as a book pk. So earlier, when we have single primary key, we will specify integer directly. But my table does not have the single primary key, more than 1 primary key. All those primary keys are represented by using book pk. That book pk we are passing as a type here, id type, data type of the primary key. Now repository is ready. For this repository, do I need to write @repository annotation or not required? So do we need @repository or we don't need @repository? We don't need @repository annotation because This is a special interface extending the properties from the JPA. When the project is started, this repository will be scanned. When the JPA started, when the project is started, this repository will be scanned and will identify that it is a JPA repository, and it will provide implementation for the JPA repository. Are you guys clear with this one? Okay. Next, let us create one service class, new class book service. Service package. Now, I want to represent this as a string bean. How to represent the class as a string bean? By using @service annotation. I want to write the method to insert the record into the table. Okay, come on. Public void save book. So first, I need to set the data for the primary keys. Can you tell me? I want to set the data for the primary keys. There is a generator or there is no generator? When there is no generator, what we need to do? When there is no generator, what we need to do? We need to set the value for the primary key. Fine. Come on. Book PK. PK is equal to new book PK. Constructor. Parameterized constructor is available. Book ID 101. Book name some Java. Okay. So we are able to set the value for the primary key. Now set the value for the entity. How to set the value for the entity now? Book entity is available is equal to new book of price, author name and PK. So let us set some price. Let us set some author name. Price some 1000. Author name James Gosling. Primary keys we have. Now check that. I have the book PK class. I'm setting the data for the PK. Then I'm setting the data for my entity. So to set the data to the variables, I'm using constructor. Okay, scroll down. Next one. I want to save the record. Now my data is ready. I want to save the record. Can you tell me how can I save it? Who is responsible to save the record? Repository. Service should call the repository. So repository should be injected to service. Dependency injection. What is a dependency injection? Injecting one class object into another class object is called dependency injection. Who will perform the dependency injection? IOC container. What is IOC? Remember or you forgot? 1 month completed, na? When the batch is started? November 3rd. Yeah. We already crossed 1 month. So you should not forget about the basics. IOC container. What is IOC container? What is IOC container? It is a principle which is used to manage and collaborate dependencies among the objects in the application. By using IOC container, we can perform dependency injection. Very good. So here, tell me, how can I do the dependency injection? Private book repo. Okay, good. Now, auto wiring @auto wire. What type of dependency injection? We are performing field injection now. Good. Tell me how to insert the record. Tell me how to insert the record. Repo dot save of PK or entity? Repo dot save of entity, which is used to insert the record. System.out.println record saved. That's it. Now, I'm setting the data for the PK and I'm setting the data for the entity. For the entity, I'm passing the PK as an input. Then I'm saving the entity. Okay. Now, go to start class. Go to start class. Get the IOC object. What is the return type of the run method? Configurable application context. Configurable application context. Now, I want to save the record. So, we need to call the repository method or service method. how to get the service object? How to get the service object? We need to go for context dot get bean of book service dot class. Now we got the service object. Now service dot save book. Service dot save book. Now whatever the entity we are using, that entity is mapped to book info table in our database. That table is not available. Do we have a table with a name called book info? No. Then table will be created or table will not be created? Table will be created or will not be created? Auto DDL auto. I'm giving update. What is the meaning of update? If a table is already available, don't create that. If the table is not available, create the table. Okay, good. Go to start class and execute it. Run this application, run as boot app. Can you see that book table created? See how many primary keys are available. How many primary keys are available? So there are two primary keys are available. If the table contains more than one primary key, then it is called as a composite primary key. Now go to the table and verify. Select show tables. Now can you see books info table created? Yes. Now check the data in the table. Yes. Select a star from book info table. Now are we able to insert the record in the table? Now you can describe the table also to check whether two primary keys are available or not. Now you see book ID and book name both are coming as a primary key. So what are the annotations we used to represent more than one primary key? We used annotations called embeddable and embedded ID. Embeddable represent the class which contains primary key columns. Embedded ID annotation will represent which class should be used for the primary keys, right? So like this, can I have 3 primary keys also? 10 primary keys also? Yes, we can do that. Now, whenever we have primary keys, guys, remember, when we go for primary key, single column, that column should not contain the duplicate data. That column should not contain the duplicate data. But when you go for composite primary key, these columns can contain the duplicate data, but combination should not be repeated. I can insert one more record with the name as a Java only, but that record should not contain ID and name same. The combination should not be repeated when you go for composite primary key. I cannot insert one more record with 101 and Java, but I can insert one record with 101 Python, 101 DevOps. I can insert one record 101 different course name. If course name is same, ID should be different. If ID is same, course name should be different. Both cannot be the same. So if you go for single primary key, that column should have the unique data. Now let's try. I'm trying to insert same record once again. What will happen? Run as boot application. Record select. Record selected. So how it is selecting the record? With the given book name and book ID. So with the given data, record is already available. So what happened now? Is it inserting the record again or not inserting the record again? No. So it will check with the primary keys, get data is available or not available. Now go and change that 102. Java. So Java is already there. Can I use another record with the same name? Yes. Primary key combination should not be repeated. Okay, run this. Run as boot application. Now what happened? Record is inserted. Go to the table, start from table. Now 102, but Java is available. So above record and below record both are same or not same? Not same. ID is different. Okay. So the primary key columns values combination should not be repeated when you go for composite primary key. Are you able to understand? how to insert the data into the table by using composite primary key. Now, I want to retrieve the data by using primary keys. Earlier, what is the method we used to retrieve the records from the table? Find all, to retrieve all the records. If I want to retrieve one record, what is the method? If you want to retrieve all the records from the table, find all method. I want to retrieve the record based on the primary key. If I want to retrieve the record based on the primary key, we will go for find by method. What is the parameter for the find by method? What is the parameter for the find by method? ID. Earlier, how many IDs? 1. Now, 2. Right. Check this. Public void get book data. Public void get book data. Okay. Now, I need to get the data from the repository by using find by ID. So, can I pass 101 as a ID to get the record? Book ID can I pass to get the data? Is it accepting the book ID to get the data or not accepting the book ID to get the data? Come on guys, accepting or not accepting? Not accepting. What is the type we have given in the entity? What is the type of our entity class? In the repository, what is the type I have given? PK. So what you need to pass as an input for find by ID? Book PK object, not the book ID. Because if you have if you have only one column as a primary key, that column data you can pass as a parameter for the method. But now we are having two primary key columns. Those two primary key columns we are representing as a embeddable class. That embeddable class object you need to pass as a parameter for find by method. Now, so let us create book PK that is representing the primary keys. Book PK is equal to new book PK ID and name 101 Java. Okay. Now then repository dot find by ID, what we need to pass? We need to pass PK object as a para. Remember that. So when you are dealing with the only one primary key, direct primary key column value you can supply as a input. But when we are dealing with the composite primary key is representing class object you need to pass as a input for composite primary key. Return type optional. How to get the data from optional? If find by ID dot is present, that means if the really record is available, then only get that record. Find by ID dot get. Okay, get book method. Save book method is available, get book method is available. Now service dot save book, let us comment, then service dot get book method. Okay, run this. See the console. We are able to execute select query. Are we able to retrieve all the data? Are we able to retrieve all the data? Yes. So we are able to retrieve the record by using book PK. Look at the classes first. I have created one book PK class. What is the purpose of book PK? What is the purpose of book PK? It is representing all the primary key columns. Then embeddable book. There are two variables available: embedded ID, repository, extending from the JPA. This is entity and this is PK class, which is representing primary keys. Service. So to save the book, setting the data to the PK object, then setting the data to book object. Then I am calling the save method, which will save our book record into database table along with the primary key column values. when you want to retrieve the record, we are going for a method called find by id method to retrieve the data from the table. Find by id method will take primary keys as a input, but we don't have single primary key. We are having multiple primary keys. So all the primary keys we are representing by using pk object. That pk object we are passing as a parameter to find by id. Then it will retrieve the record based on the primary key column values. That means select a star from table where id is equal to given value and name is equal to Java. Based on that, it will find out the record. If the record is available, then you can get the record by using get method. Okay, good. So with this, we understood what is primary key, what is a generator, what is composite primary key, what is embeddable, and what is embedded ID. Now, I'm not writing setters getters in the file. You need to write that. Setters getters constructors, you need to write for that. For your practice, I'm giving these classes. Right, guys. So as of now, in the data JPA, what are the annotations we have used? We used one annotation called @entity. What is the purpose of @entity annotation? It is used to represent our Java class as a entity class. And the next one, we used @table. So @table annotation to map our Java class with the database table. So is it mandatory to map the class to the table? No, optional. If you don't map it, it will consider the class name as a table name. So if your class name and the table names are different, then you need to map your class to the table by using table annotation. Then next one, we used @ID. What is the purpose of @ID? What is the purpose of @ID? @ID annotation is used to map our variable to primary key column in the table. It is used to map our variable to primary key column in the table. Then we used @column annotation. What is the purpose of @column? Come on. What is the purpose of @column? It is used to map our variable to the column name. It is used to map our variable to the column name. @column annotation. Then we used @generated value annotation. What is the purpose of @generated value? In order to specify generator for our variable primary key column. If a primary key column value, if we don't want to set, then we will take generator to set the value for primary key column. What is the purpose of generic generator? There is an annotation called generic generator. When you want to specify custom generator, what is the annotation we are using? For the custom generator, we are using @generic generator. @generic generator. Okay. And we used one annotation called @creation timestamp. We used one annotation called creation timestamp. What is the meaning of creation timestamp? What is the meaning of creation timestamp? It is used to generate the value for created date. It is used to populate the value for the column when the record is inserted. For every table, this created date and updated date will be available. I don't want to set that date manually. Okay. When the record is inserted, automatically that date should be populated to the column in the table. That is the creation timestamp. And we used one more annotation, which is called update timestamp. What is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of that? It is going to populate the date when the record is updated in the database table. Okay. Then after that we used one annotation today, which is @embeddable. We used one annotation called @embeddable. What is the meaning of @embeddable? What is the meaning of @embeddable? It is used to represent the Java class which contains all the primary keys. Then what is embedded ID? What is embedded ID? It is used to refer the embeddable class in the entity. So for entity, we need to tell where the primary keys are available. So to tell the entity where the primary keys are available, we are using embedded ID with the class. So embeddable represent all the primary keys. Entity should know where the primary key columns are available. For that, we are using embedded ID annotation. So total 10 annotations that we are using from data JPA. Read these annotations. In the interview, they will ask these kind of questions also. Can you tell me what are the annotations you have used in the Spring Boot? Can you tell me what are the annotations you used in the Spring Data JPA? What annotations you have used in the Spring Web MVC? So they will ask such kind of questions. So you should know what annotations we are using as part of our repository development. What as part of our persistence layer development. Read them. Entity, table, ID, column, generated value, generic generator, creation timestamp, update timestamp, embeddable, and embedded ID. Online students, are you clear with all the annotations that we used so far in the data JPA? Okay. Apart from this, can you tell me what annotations we used in the Spring or Spring Boot? The very first annotation that we used, @component. What is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of @component? It is used to specify. It is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. @component will represent Java class as a Spring Bean. @service. What is the purpose of @service? Same, to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. Then @repository. What is the purpose of @repository? Component will represent Java class as a Spring Bean. Service will represent Java class as a Spring Bean. Repository also will represent Java class as a Spring Bean. And we have used component, sorry, configuration. What is the purpose of configuration? To represent our Java class as a configuration class. Then we used @bean. What is @bean? To create the object on our own. I don't want IOC container to create my bean object. I want to create the object on my own. Then we will go for @bean method. Then we used @primary. What is the purpose of @primary? To represent one Java class as a auto-wire bean. Then we used @auto-void and we used @qualifier. What is the meaning of @auto-void? To perform dependency injection based on by name or by type. So if you want to perform dependency injection with by name, you can go for qualifier. If you are going with by type, there is a chance of getting the ambiguity. To resolve that ambiguity problem, we are going to use primary annotation. Then we used one annotation called @scope annotation. What is the purpose of @scope annotation? What is the purpose of @scope? It is used to specify what is the scope of our bean. What is the default scope? What is the default scope? The default scope is a singleton. If you don't want, you can change it to prototype. Then we have used one annotation called component scan. What is the purpose of component scan? What is the purpose of component scan? It is used to identify the Spring Bean classes which are available in the project. So it is going to scan the packages of our application based on base package name. So if any class is represented as a Spring Bean, IOC container will load that, will manage the bean life cycle. Are you able to understand? Right. Then we used one annotation called @Spring Boot application main annotation in the start class. What is the purpose of @Spring Boot application annotation? That one annotation is equal to 3 annotations: @boot configuration, @auto configuration, @component scan. Can we configure more than one base package in the Spring Boot? How? How to configure more than one base package in the Spring Boot? By using @component scan annotation. If I don't write @component scan, which will be the base package of our project? The package which contains the start class is called as the base package. So it will scan base packages as well as sub packages of the base package to perform component scanning. Good. Then we used one more annotation, that is post construct. What is the meaning of post construct? Do you remember? Post construct and pre-destroy. Bean life cycle. If you want to achieve bean life cycle programmatically, if you want to achieve bean life cycle with annotations, then you can go for post construct and pre-destroy. So what is bean life cycle? What is the bean life cycle? From bean object creation to bean object destroy. That process will be taken care by IOC container. That is called bean life cycle. When the bean life cycle taken care by IOC container, I want to execute some life cycle methods on the bean. For that, you can go for post construct pre-destroy. When the post construct method will execute. When the post construct method will execute. After the bean object is created, post construct method will execute. When the pre-destroy will execute. Before removing the bean object from the IOC container, pre-destroy method will be executed. Look at this. 13 plus 10. Total 23 annotations we have used as of now. @component, @service, @repository, configuration, bean, primary, auto-void, qualifier, scope, component scan, boot application, post construct, pre-destroy. So these annotations are created in the Spring Boot or Spring framework. That means whenever you use the annotation, some logic will execute in the background. Instead of we are writing that logic, we are using annotation given by the Spring so that that logic will be executed. XML configuration is completely avoided in the Spring Boot. So when you go for the Spring framework, we can manage configurations by using XML. But in the Spring Boot, XML is completely removed. Everything we need to manage by using annotations only. So as of now, we have seen 23 annotations. As of now, we have seen 23 annotations. If anyone asks you what annotations you have used in the Spring Boot, you should be able to explain these 23 annotations, guys. Almost 40 days. Do you feel? Do you learn anything in the 40 days of time? Already 40 days completed for the Spring Boot course. So, any confidence that, okay, I can learn this Spring Boot? Or you feel it is difficult? Or you feel it is easy? Easy only. Akka. Online people. Is there any use of this 40 days of time you spent with me? I have taken your 40 days of time just to teach 3 modules: Spring Core, Spring Boot, and Data JPA. 40 days of time we have taken to complete this. The next, we need to work on Web MVC, REST API, microservices, cloud, security, tools, batch, config server. So lot more content. So now, so the most real-time related concepts we have to learn when you go for REST API development and microservices development. But still, data JPA is not completed fully. Still, there are some topics that we need to learn in the data JPA. But 90% of the data JPA completed. So 2 to 3 topics are there. The first one, how to work with association mapping in the data JPA. That is very important and little confusing concept. So how to establish relationship with the tables by using our entity classes. When the tables are having the relationship, how we will represent that relationship in our entity class. That is called association mapping. That is one of the important concept. Then next one, we need to understand what is a profile in the Spring Boot. There is a concept called profiles in the Spring Boot, and there is a concept called YML files. As of now, we are using properties files, but in the industry, people are using YML. Application.properties file is available. So as a alternate for the properties file, we are going to use application.yml file. How to use that YML file, we have to understand that. And one more thing is how to work with embedded database. As of now, we are using Oracle database or MySQL database. Because we are installing the database in our system, we are connecting. Tomorrow, when you go for the company, you can't install the softwares in your company system directly. If you want to install any software, you need to take the permission from your manager. You need to take the permission from the IT department in the company. Security will be available. So you can't install the databases directly in your system. If you want to do some practice, then you need to go for embedded database. Spring Boot will support for embedded database. H2 database is available. We are going to use as a embedded database. So these concepts we have to learn. So the first one, how to work with embedded DB, which is H2. Then we need to understand how to work with Spring profiles. How to work with Spring profiles. Then we need to understand how to work with association mapping. How to work with association mapping. Then application.properties versus application.yml. YML. These are the topics that we need to discuss. How to work with embedded DB, how to work with Spring profiles, how to work with association mapping, properties file versus YML. This we can discuss later point of time also. It's not immediate urgent. Okay. So these things that we need to learn. So once we complete these things, then we can say our data JPA got completed. Then we can start with the WebMVC modules. WebMVC means we are going to develop a web application by using Spring Boot. So as of now, what we are developing by using Spring Boot? Standalone, which is running only in one system. I need to develop a web application. Okay, good. Let us see how to, before going to start, are you guys clear with what we discussed in the data JPA and Spring Boot? Annotations, total 23 annotations we have used so far now. And I'm giving one task, assignment. Did you complete yesterday assignment? No. Yes or no? Pakka? All four? What is the requirement? Insert image into table using data JPA. Suppose I want to create one person table, person ID, person name, person image. So how do you insert that binary data into database table? By using data JPA. So this is the fifth assignment. Already I have given 4 yesterday. Today I have added one more thing. Insert image into DB table using data JPA. So when I give the assignment, you need to Google, you need to do the research. That is R&D, guys. R&D means research and development. That will help to improve your self-learning capability. So today I can teach everything, but tomorrow you need to do the things on your own. So try to habituate. So all these 4 tasks I have not explained in the class. So the reason, if I explain within one day, everything will complete. That's not the important part. Thing is, whether you are able to learn something new on your own or not. That is the important, because for next 2 months, I will be there with you. I will teach the concept. After 2 months, you will, if you go to the company, then nobody will teach you the concepts what are required for your project implementation. Okay. So you need to do the things on your own. And another requirement, call stored procedure. Call stored procedure using data JPA. So in the JDBC, we are having callable statement to execute the stored procedure. Now, I'm not using JDBC. I'm going for data JPA. So if I have stored procedure in the database, how can we call that stored procedure by using data JPA? So you need to, simple learning, you need to habituate, guys. So what is my question? Call stored procedure using data JPA. So many people I have seen in the offline and online groups also, people are sending the messages, sir, please explain how to implement projection in the data JPA. Sir, please explain how to call stored procedure using data JPA. When you don't know something, what you need to do is, you just take this, go to Google. Jai Bolo Google Mata Ki. Jai Bolo Google Mata Ki. Just type this. Call stored procedure using data JPA. N number of examples are coming. How to call the stored procedure from the Java and JPA. So you see here, they have given the example. Here, they have given the example. Callable statement, that is the JDBC one. If you want to call it from, data JPA, so n number of examples will be available in the internet. How to call the stored procedure by using data JPA. Okay. So now come back. How calling stored procedure from Spring Data JPA. Calling stored procedure from Spring Data JPA. This is the procedure they have created. How they are calling the stored procedure? they are calling the stored procedure like this. Procedure name, @procedure is available. Name of the procedure. What is input for the procedure? That's it. Code is already available. Just you need to know how to search that. So that is Google searching technique. So if you are good in Google searching technique, you can survive in the companies very easily, because all the developers cannot remember the code line by line. Now, I want to insert the image into database table, okay, by using data JPA. I have not explained in the class. So you need to search in the Google. Insert store image into MySQL using data JPA, right? Using data JPA repository. Save images using Spring Boot and MySQL. Upload and download images using JPA. Go here. Now, this is completely a REST API. Now see, when there is an image, what is the data type they are taking? Byte array. What is the annotation? Lob represents a large object. When you want to store binary data into the column, that column will use one annotation called lob annotation. Lob represents large object. Now, how they are going to insert the data into table? Okay, so here they created the repository. They are converting that file, whatever the file is available, file data they will convert into byte array. Then they will set the data to this variable as a byte array, and they will insert the image into database table. So just you need to search, guys. Searching is very important. Okay, so you need to search. Effortless Spring Boot file upload and download. In the web application they explained. Always prefer to go for Stack Overflow website. It is a forum for the developers. So whoever face the problem, they will post their problem in the Stack Overflow. If you go to the Stack Overflow, somebody is saying this: I'm creating web app using boot and data JPA. I want to upload many images. I want those images to save in a storage and save the location of the file into database. I'm not understanding how to achieve this. One of the developer posting this question in the Stack Overflow. What is his question? He want to upload many images into the system, but he don't want to store the images in the database. He want to store the images into some location. That location path he want to store in the database. That is what we do in the real time. We don't store the binary data directly in the database. We don't store binary data directly in the database. Now, if you see in our Ashok ID website, there are so many images are available. Banners are available. These carousel banners are available. These short banners are available. And courses images are available. We don't store these many images into our relational databases because it is a binary data. So in the real time, what people will do in my project, in the real time, what we do, we have our application ready. Our Java web application is available. Java web application is available. That Java web application want to deal with the images. So here we have a database. Database is RDBMS. RDBMS nothing but relational database. Relational database is used to store relational data, text data, not the binary data. Now, in my project, I want to use some images. How do you store the images in our application? That's why in the project, what we will do, we will take a separate server for storage. We'll take a separate server for the storage. So whatever the image you want to store, that image we are going to store into this storage. Whenever you store the image into the storage, it will give one path for the image where exactly that image is stored. That path we are going to store in the database, not the actual image. So how we will get this storage? To get this storage in the industry, people are using AWS Cloud S3 service. S3 stands for Simple Storage Service in the AWS Cloud, which supports for unlimited data storage. This is called real time. So if you are storing image directly in the database, you are learning the concept. But in the real-time project, images will not be stored into database directly. Image will be stored into one storage location. That storage location image path that we will be stored into database table. Are you guys getting? Who will provide that storage for us? Cloud. So there is a AWS cloud, S3 service available, simple storage service. I will upload my image into S3. S3 path will be available. That path I will store into my database table. So that is how people will deal with the binary data in the project. So same requirement. Somebody got the same requirement. He posted same question in the Stack Overflow. Can you read this? Come on, can you read that? I'm creating a web application using Spring Boot with the data JPA. I want to upload many images. I want those images to save in the storage and the save the location of the file in the database, not the actual file. File will be stored into some server. That file path we are going to store into database server. I'm not understanding how to achieve this. So one developer like us, he got that requirement. He posted that question in the Stack Overflow. Scroll down. Read the answer. Understand? So what I have explained, is it matching with the answer? So the storage will happen in the S3 service. Whenever you store the image in the S3, it will generate one URL for your image. That is called path of your image. That path we will store into database. So for the developers, cloud knowledge is required or not? So AWS, don't think that AWS is a separate course. Only DevOps people will learn the AWS. I am Java developer, I don't need AWS. So if you get this requirement in the company, 100% this requirement will be there. So as a developer, you should know AWS also. Now you understand why we added AWS in the JRTP. Without the cloud knowledge, you can't survive. So industry requirement is very, very high. So industry is expecting all-rounders. You should be able to do everything on your own. Now, scroll down. They have given some solutions here. Another solution what they have given. Use S3 bucket for storing the image and MySQL for storing the address of the image. That's it. Code for S3 bucket. What is this? Uploading files to AWS S3 bucket using Spring Boot. They have given the code directly. How to set up the S3 bucket. What is the Java dependency that we need to add for the S3 bucket. Then Java code to upload the file into S3 bucket. The logic is already available in the internet. So many people who are learning the Java, they don't know how to search in the Google. So whatever the requirement we are getting, whatever the examples we are developing, everything is already available in the internet. You just need to improve searching skill. If you know how to do the Google search, easily you can do the course. Easily you can complete what are the assignments I am giving. Getting my point? So I have shown you two examples. Insert the image into table using data JPA. Call the stored procedure using data JPA. And I have seen lot of people came to me and asked that, sir, how to retrieve specific columns from the table by using data JPA? How to execute a projection query by using data JPA? Whenever you get a problem, before coming to me, did you search in the Google? That is the important part. Okay. So now select specific columns using data JPA. Google search query is already there. That means so many people already executed the same query in the Google. That is indexed. Spring JPA selecting specific columns. Open that. Select project ID, project name from the project. This is our requirement. We need to select the employee ID and employee salary. Same query or not? Same query, but they have given as a native query as a true. But we can go for HQL. When you select the specific columns, what is the return type they are taking? I have seen many people taking list of entity as a return type. That is wrong. You need to take the return type as list of object array. So once you want to execute the select query with the projection, you need to go for list of object array as a return type, because you are not retrieving all the columns from the table. You are retrieving specific columns from the table. So for your requirement, already the answer is available in the Google, but you don't know how to search it. So you need to improve that searching skill. So any assignment I'm giving or any task I'm giving, so you need to search in the Google, you need to learn and you need to implement. That is called research and development. That is very, very, very important in the real time. So tomorrow if I get some new requirement in my company, if I don't know, I will go to Google, whatever the requirement is there, I will type, right? Then I will get that. For example, in our project, we need to implement random text, random password. How to generate random password in the Java? Generate random number or random string in the Java. So generate random string. So if you go to Stack Overflow, code will be available, which will give you random string. So everything is there. The thing is searching technique. How to search, how to learn. So you need to improve that self-learning capability. If you know how to learn the concept on your own, then you can become all-rounder. You can work with any technology. So today, I'm working as a Java developer and I'm dealing with AWS and cloud. If my project is asking me to work on the Selenium, within one day, I can learn the Selenium and I can implement the Selenium in the project. So that self-learning capability is there. So that grasping power, how to analyze, how to search, that skill I have. If you give any task, I need 2 hours of time, I will complete that task, because I know how to search in the Google, how to get the code from the Google, how to customize that code according to our project requirement. But what student mindset? Whatever faculty will explain, same thing they will practice. And many people in this 21st century also, people are asking, please share the code. Whatever the examples I'm developing, these are rocket science applications. Just how to insert the data, how to retrieve the data. Composite primary key. So if you don't know how to work with the composite primary key, what you need to do? When I type what it is coming? Third one. Second one. Composite primary key in the data JPA. Spring data JPA composite primary key example. Stack Overflow. How to create and handle composite primary keys. What is this? What is this? What is this? Embeddable represents primary keys. Embedded ID represents. They have given the solution also. Code is already there. You can make embedded class which contains your 2 keys and then have a reference to that class using embedded ID in your entity. Done. Just within 2 lines of code they explain what is composite primary key, how to use that. So this is your class @entity ID class, something like this. Now the code is available. You need to know how to search that. Code. Still, if you are asking, please share the workspace, please share the code, that means you are not matured. If you are still asking, please share the code, that means you are not matured. You are not having self-learning skill set. You don't know how to learn the concept on your own. Okay, so everything what we are discussing in the class available in the Google. Search for that. Okay, how to insert the image into table. So you know what is the data JPA, you know how to create the boot project, you know how to create the entity, you know how to insert the record. As of now, we inserted text data. Now we need to insert image, that is a binary file. How to deal with the image in the data JPA? You need to Google and you need to learn. Getting my point? So today, I want you to complete all these 6 tasks. Whoever completed the yesterday's one, today you need to work on remaining 2 tasks. If you are not completed yesterday task, please complete those things also, guys. So from now onwards, you need to keep more efforts to learn the concept. Every day assignment will be available. Some concepts which I have not explained in the class also, you need to analyze from the Google and you need to implement them in the project. You need to analyze them and you need to implement them in the project. Got my point? Good. Then I will give you third requirement. Third requirement for today. Export DB table data to Excel file. I did not discuss that. I want you to research. My table data is available in the Excel file. Sorry, my table having the data in the table. My database having a table which is having data. You need to develop the application by using boot with the data JPA. When you run your boot application, that program should take the data from the table. It should store into Excel file. Rows and columns are available. So I have not explained that. You should try. You need to analyze. Just Google. You will get the solution. Implement that in your project. So I want you to keep busy, right? So you have time now. After 1 week, project tools are going to start. Then you will not get much time. Morning class, evening class. Project tools practice, Spring Boot practice. You will be busy. That's why. So you have to complete all these assignments in this week only. Seven requirements I have given. So 7 tasks I have given. So I think today you can complete all these things, or tomorrow. By tomorrow, I want all of you to complete all these 7 tasks. Are you clear? Good. Any questions? We'll come to that. Once we go for the project, now we will see in which scenario we need to go for composite primary. Now we understand the concept. So in the mini project, I will show you that. Yep. Online students, are you clear with the requirement? Assignment that I have given. Yesterday assignment 4, today assignments 3. Total 7 assignments are available for you. You have to complete and you have to show me that. You need to work on that assignment, guys. Yes, good. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today. We'll meet in the evening project class. Thank you, guys.